Okay, in the last video, I showed you how to make the physical architecture, and mine's not detailed out fully yet, but let's take a look at how do we relate the physical architecture to the logical architecture, because really we want that traceability. We want to be able to say, oh, this physical component relates to this logical component. So there are several ways to do this. I'm going to kind of show you the tedious way first, and then I'll show you the shortcut. So the tedious way would be to create a new package diagram. So within system, I'm going to create a new diagram called, and it's going to be a package diagram. And I'm going to name this just logical to physical allocation. Okay, so logical to physical allocation. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take our logical element, which I created the CPU. So we have the CPU. I'm just going to drag that in. So we have the CPU, and then in my physical architecture, I have this AMD Ryzen 5 7600 CPU. All right, so we have this, and we need to relate those to say, oh, this component represents the physical as component of this logical architecture. And to do that, we just use allocate. So we need to find allocate up here, should be up here in common, allocate right there. And we draw a line from the logical to the physical, and it comes up allocate. So that means that these two are tied together. And this just makes sure that we're not missing anything from our logical architecture to our physical architecture, or if we have things in the physical architecture that have no logical components, then why are we actually having that physical component? So this relates those two together. Now, that's the tedious way to do it, because you would have to do this for every single component. So every component in this list for logical, you would have to create an associated physical allocation here in this package diagram. So that's the tedious way to do it. I'm going to show you the easy way to do it. So let's close some of these things or collapse some of these things. Instead of making a package diagram, I'm going to right click and say create diagram. And instead of creating a package diagram, I'm going to create an allocation matrix. So SysML allocation matrix. Okay. And you can just click OK here. All right. So nothing shows up. So what we want here is we're going to create rows and columns, and we're going to kind of tie those two elements together. So in terms of the row type element here, we don't want activity, we want block, because we've been modeling with block. So let's go to block. Okay, block, checkbox that. So we have block up there, and column element will be block as well. And the row scope means where are we going to look for all of these elements? So, so under system, we have structure, and hopefully you've differentiated these two between logical and physical. And the reason we do that is because now we can just drag logical into the row scope, and we can drag physical into the column scope. And then it'll ask you to refresh. And here we have some things already showing up because I created that allocation already. So it says the CPU here is allocated to this AMD Ryzen 5 7600 CPU. Now, here we have this PC physical node showing up. If we want to remove that column, I think we can just right click. Yeah, remove from matrix. Yeah. And we can probably remove PC logical node there too. So I'll just remove from matrix. Yeah. So we only have one item in our physical architecture, but you can see that the CPU then is allocated to the Ryzen 5. And make sure your row to column is set correct, or the direction set correctly. So this means the allocation goes from the row to the column, and that's what we want. So we want row to column here. If you happen to swap the physical and logical, the logicals in the columns, physicals in the rows here, then you would have to swap the direction here of that arrow. And to unallocate something, you can just double click. And to allocate, you can just double click again. So if you want to allocate more things, you would just fill out this matrix by clicking. And the big thing is here, all the components in the logical should have an allocation to something in the physical. So that's the quick way to do allocation rather than going to the package diagram and drawing all these lines. Okay. So that is allocation, and I'll stop it here.